currently a lot of momentums are still events driven. I mean, people ask the questions: are the launches successful? Does the company postpone their rockets? Who wins the NASA contracts, right? So all those events, news headlines are pretty unpredictable. Not like, oh, I can take a deep dive into Apple's earnings report and accounting data. For example, like Astra Space, actually, its stock plummeted today by nearly 19% after its rocket failed during the test launch. How do you evaluate the risk to invest in rockets companies?
I'm a bit of a gambler. So I look at Astra's dip as a buying opportunity. How you do it is really up to you. The best way is always options. You buy calls, you have limited risk, or you do some other format of that. But finance vehicle aside, their engineering is on point. They had an anomaly, yes. But if you look at it from what it was, essentially the engine shut down after there was a fuel event problem where it exploded or something like that. It didn't explode the engine as far as I can tell. The engine just shut down because it received data that, okay, there's a problem, shut it down. And then the avionics and the in-flight computer figured it out so that it went to the side. And I talked to my friend who's on the board here, who used to build rockets with von Braun. He's never seen something like that before. So the thing moved to the side and then went up and actually achieved 50 kilometers before they blew it up. So it was embarrassing, and you can say whatever, but I would count that as a win from an engineering perspective, because I want problems to happen early on when I'm doing things. I want to see I want to see the maximum problem that can happen so that I can see how far my tech can go, so that I understand, okay, well, it's within this envelope, and okay, it's only 20% of what I know from real world data this thing can do. And they just got some really good data of how their flight computer can take that and still fly. And they almost, 50 kilometers, that was only 30 kilometers away. They were about halfway to real orbit. So they really, and they just put if I remember correctly, they self-terminated. It wasn't that the thing lost control. They said, okay, terminate. They got over a certain water area and they decided, all right, we're done. So I think it's a little overblown, and I would probably take a look at it, when it cools off, if not before that. But because I know some of the engineers there, they're not idiots. And I think the proof is in the pudding. Their tech kind of showed what it can do. And at first I was shocked, but then I was like, well, okay, I'm impressed. That was pretty cool.
Cool. And among, all the rockets and space concept companies, there are Astra Space we just talked about. There are also Lockheed Martin, Virgin Galactic, and a bunch of others, right? For retail investors or for other people who don't really know about the tech behind all those names, how to find the best target or a few targets to invest, or what are some measurements or metrics to do the valuation of these stocks?
See, that's a tough thing, because as you pointed out, they're not doing a lot of revenue right now. So it's not like you can look at it and then really do projections and really have EBITDA and all this other stuff. I would probably look at it from what we just talked about, reasonable success rate of engineering, and also speed of management. Everybody's favorite, and mine to a degree as well, is Elon Musk. The guy iterates, and just keeps going. And he's a really manager, but he gets it done. What I have problems with sometimes with Virgin is that they're very managed from afar sort of thing. That's not to say their product is bad. Their product is very good, and actually was very impressed with the showmanship that Galactic did for their inaugural launch, because that's what that company's all about. They're there to sell rides. They're not there to innovate. They're there to sell rides, and that's exactly what they were doing. So I give them that kudos. Whereas you look at Blue Origin, it was the complete opposite. Their engineering is great, but if their idea is that they want to sell rides, they did a terrible job. Most people came away from that hating Jeff Bezos, which I think that's not a good idea. He's doing a great job, but they didn't sell it the right way. So you got to pay attention to that, as well as the engineering. Something that people, for some reason, have glazed over, maybe because they're not as dramatic, is Rocket Lab. Their financials aren't that great, but these guys have put up 18, maybe 20 rockets that have been successful over the last 3 to 5 years. I think they were actually in operation. They're the standard. They're the ones that, all the other small launchers are trying to beat. So keep an eye on the steady eddies that nobody seems to talk about. And lastly, if you're not willing to sit there and do the granular research that I do on a daily basis, where you're checking stats and talking to people, this, that, and the other, it's not a bad idea just to have exposure through an ETF or a mutual fund. And even though I don't like the picks that, I forgot the woman's name that runs ARK Invest, Kathy Wood. Yeah. She is a brilliant trader, and she knows how to analyze things appropriately. And she's not afraid to get in your face and find out what's exactly going on. That being said, you look at her innovation fund, Space and Innovation Fund, it's filled with like a lot of the FANG stocks, as well as some of the old players like Lockheed Martin and I think Grumman. So,
and even JD from China.
Yeah. So you won't see a lot of like blazing innovation and like front runners, but you'll have the exposure so that if one of these guys pops hard, you'll go along for the ride, so the idea. So I don't like doing that. I'm more of a cowboy, but that's me. If you want exposure, you're probably better off taking less risk anyway.
Great. Speaking of Elon Musk, we do have an audience asking, what is your comment about SpaceX? Is it a good investment? I mean, like it's like pre-IPO. I'm not sure when they will go IPO, but what Chris, what do you think of SpaceX?
If you can get some of their stock, take it. Whatever you want to say about Musk, he's a brilliant businessman. He knows how to market. He has an incredible marketing team. He is very, very smart and clever at what he does. And when he's not, he finds out what the problem is and then becomes smarter, if that makes any sense. This is a guy that, even though he has a physics degree, taught himself engineering by just finding engineering books and reading them. So he's what's called an autodidact. He reads it, he remembers it. So that alone is worth, being a part of SpaceX. However,
I like that however part.
Yeah, there's parts of it I kind of armchair quarterback. I'm like, why is he doing that? But the guy only has a certain amount of bandwidth that he can, run at this, and he's got some tall tent poles to knock down. So I can understand why he does it, but it's kind of like, why are you still staging? I even met him, and I'm like, do you want to do Aerospace? And he's like, sure, send me some info. I never got around to. I forgot we couldn't connect or something, but he was interested, but he just never ran it down. And I'm just like, why? Why not do this? And then he starts doing the spaceship thing, and I'm like, okay, good idea. And then the whole dropping down with fins, and I'm like, why? Don't belly flop. Do it. Just do the burn in front of the nose cone or stuff like that with plasma. That would be more efficient. But I think it's at the end of the day, it's just you have to move forward and do something, and that's what he's really good at. He doesn't just sit around and think about it. He's like, all right, let's go up to the pad and blow it up, and that'll give him data to then make a decision to do something later. I was really impressed with how he boiled down the engineering process because, going back to Astra Rocket Lab for a second as comparison, Astra is still in their development phase. Rocket Lab is past the development phase. They're in their manufacturing and commercial phase. That is light years different than development. Manufacturing terrifies me, because you know, coming up and inventing something is one thing, turning it into a commercial product that goes out on a wagon wheel of a press every day, every minute of the week, that's a totally different animal. And I fully agree with Musk when he says that, you know, that is the bigger innovative process than the actual innovative process. So I have a lot of respect for how he does that, because, you know, there's a lot of engineering that he shouldn't be doing sometimes, but he still does it to figure out what he shouldn't be doing. Because real world is different than, well, I don't think it'll work. If you do a real world and it doesn't work, well, now I know it doesn't work. And that is priceless. So I give him credit on that. But I still wonder why sometimes, like from a business perspective, he's doing Starlink, yay. But where is the business model now? Is it Internet of Things? Is it launch? You know, the launch seems to have, like, if you listen to what they're talking about constantly, when Shotwell's up and talking about it, their big satellite business is shrinking, and that's their gravy train. So now are they moving to just Starlink and that's it, and then they're chasing Mars, and that'll be the next big thing. I'm sometimes I sit here and I wonder, like, how are they going to keep making money? That's really my question.
Is there anything else you want to say? Any question that I didn't ask you, but you still want to share with our audience today?
Pay attention to the flow of money. And that's something that's really key to this whole industry. You see the money start choking up and stop flowing toward this industry, get out. And, you know, that's what keeps me up at night, because I see the frothiness right now. I see everybody's looking at it, and that's usually, when it's in the news, it's usually time to go. Unfortunately, my friend has been a silver trader since the 70s. He's told me that. I'm like, don't tell me that. But, you know, yeah, pay attention to the flow of money. So far, it's flowing in this direction. But, you know, when everybody's running to one door, it usually starts moving the other way. So be careful.